right, welcome back to A Mile High and About to Die. I am one of your hosts, Zach Blum.
And I'm the other, Zach Alex Blum.
This is all the hosts. Sometimes we get our names mixed up.
The full set.
Yeah, the full set of hosts. Yeah, co-hosts.
What are we doing today, Zach?
We're doing step 3 today, Alex. We are doing the principle in action behind the step. We're going to talk about the step as well. Why are we talking about the 12 steps in the first place?
Because they're fun.
Because they're amazing. We happened to run our lives into the ground a few years back. We have been restored to great lives through working these steps.
I think it's worth noting that, most people that get into the program in their 40s and 50s, we were advanced. We really ran it in early. I was almost dead in my 20s, right?
Right. Some people are more competitive about their disease than
others. If I was going to do it, I was going to, really rip it up quickly,
Absolutely.
So I know a lot about fixing it up, too.
Yeah, and the idea being here that if it works for us with our extreme problems, it'll work for anybody with a smaller problem. Our minds were extremely closed, dangerously closed, murderously closed. We were dishonest, and we were not willing to change at all, and yet here we sit. So if anybody out there has, you practice honesty regularly, you practice open-mindedness regularly, if you practice, acting on the truth when you see it, taking the next right action regularly, you're only going to be helped by this. But we're examining, why do the 12 steps work? Why is this a process of transformation upon which, you can examine every other method of transformation out there and see it in a more clear way, or even break it down into the steps themselves. It seems like it's like the mother lode of all. It's like the meta program, I know a lot of people who have done the 12 steps have gone on to great things and creating their own, almost like, going into the free market and saying, these ideas work, and they use more modern language than when the 12 steps were written back in the 30s. So we're doing a similar thing, I guess. We're just saying what worked for us in an effort to not only help, the 12 steppers who may be listening, or people that may not realize they have a problem, or people that know they have a problem but they can't fix it or stop it, but also just for everybody out there who wants to, have a better relationship with themselves, wants to, start the thing that they have not been able to start, but that you want to start it. You're put here to do this thing and you haven't done this thing, or you can't stop doing this thing that seems to be, if it got more out of control, it could really, fuck you up. So we're here to talk to everybody.
A Big 10.
Big 10.
So far we've done steps 1 and 2. What was that about?
So steps 1 and 2 are really about identifying. I'm putting myself into a culture, an environment of honesty and acceptance in step 1. I need to be in a place where I can tell the truth about what's really going on with me and accept that there is something going on with me. But also this idea of that I was being dishonest and I was not accepting myself before. And that led me into this kind of insane outward push to, I'm taking things out here and putting them in here because I'm in pain in here, and I'm just I'm trying to mute that pain. So that's kind of the step 1 idea, that I'm going to try and practice honesty now, and I'm going to try and practice acceptance now. And then step 2, which leads you to a place of, well, geez, if I'm going to be honest, I think I'm on a hopeless path. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm screwed.
Honestly, I'm totally fucked, and that this path is hopeless. So now I need to change paths to one that has hope. And that's the second step idea. The principle behind the second step that we put into action is, okay, I'm gonna try to find a new path for me, and I'm gonna try to find a community that's gonna be good for me, whatever that is. Obviously the 12 steppers, you have meetings, just whatever you're struggling with, Google that plus addiction, and you'll find a meeting, probably online or on Zoom, but maybe even in person. But if you don't have, something that's Googleable like that, like a major struggle, maybe it's church. I was not open-minded to church. I started going to church, or some kind of religious thing where that it's stuff where you're trying to get better at living life and being your best. But it could also be a group of, runners, or, a workout. A new gym is a community. Something that's good for you to do. A book club, something where you're around people where you feel like you're growing. Okay, so this idea of unity, service, where I'm contributing to something, and recovery. That I'm this idea of growth. I'm getting better in some way. So those are the basic ideas that we've covered thus far in the last two podcasts.
All right.
So which brings us to step 3. Alex, what is step 3?
It's the third one.
Oh, yes, right. 1, 2, and 3.
As far as I know, I believe that it's turned our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. It's not very like Bostonian. God.
Yeah, God.
Wills and our lives.
I fucking love God.
God.
I fucking love some God. I'll tell you what. He's a fucking ace, I'll tell you.
Yeah, go Pats.
Go Bees.
And do you know the principle of the third step?
I do. It is faith.
Faith.
Which I fucking hated that word. When I thought it was always using like religious-y context.
Right. It has a very heavy like religious thing. I think a lot of the process of finding higher power is deseparating.
Yeah, it works.
Deseparating.
Separate the D's.
Separating all this religious stuff and connotation in words like higher power or God or faith from like religious stuff that I'm not really that into. And so faith is one of these words where it's like faith, like if you look at the dictionary text definition, it's a pretty interesting idea. But when it's like, oh, like there's a priest and he's touching me, it's like a whole other thing, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, and so many of us heard these kind of stories and reject, like you hear this phrase, like you threw the baby out with the bathwater. The baby was Jesus though.
Oh my God.
How dare you throw baby Jesus? No, but the idea of like, it's terrible, people have done terrible things in the name of religion. It sounds fucking terrible. Let's just throw it all out. That's definitely what I did. And so I never delved deep into the ideas of religion because of these people who were going to those places seem so judgmental to me. And certainly the people doing at the core of it seem the most corrupt.
Right.
It's like, well, why would I ever want to be a part of that? I can see by the proof is in the pudding, so to speak.
And I love pudding.
Yeah, and it's brown, and there was a lot of bad stuff happening in the pudding,
It reminds me from this,
That's terrible.
The second
That's
step,
terrible.
The like contempt, pride, or investigation. Maybe just this word faith also like separated from what you think faith is, or all these kind of heavy weights around it, and just let it be a new thing again, and let's see what it's about.
Yeah, we're going to be investigating is another thing we really covered. Like this idea, we talked about Gandhi in the last two podcasts that, he was this guy that had truth force. How did we get to a place in India through nonviolent, demonstration that we were able to overthrow an unjust government basically through being a truth force. So we're going to go investigating, trying to find what the truth is, and then we're trying to bring that about. So we need to do that individually first, is the idea. If I'm going to I need to have an internal revolution where I'm aligned around a new set of ideals and principles. And so faith is one of those. I'm going to need to have an ability to put my faith into something that I don't really know if this is, I either see usually a path and I'm like, okay, I don't know where this path leads, but I know that it's the next couple steps for me or going down this path.
Right.
Or I see like a vision of the future, like a mountaintop, like I'm supposed to go to this mountaintop, but I don't know what the path is. And so I'm like, usually you get one or the other is my experience. Never it's, here's the path to this, beautiful future. And everything is just, every step of the road is already, made for you and and you're told exactly what it is. It's never like that. There's a mystery. There's a big mystery involved. And so it's just more like I'm going in this direction with the hope that based on the data of the other people I've looked at, this is going to be a path that works for me. It could work for me, and I believe it works for me. And I'm going to put my faith into something invisible out there. The future is invisible. A good future for me is invisible, but I'm investing in that outcome.
Okay, let's slow it down.
Was I talking really fast again?
In the step, it says, turned our will and our lives. What the hell does that mean? To turn our will, over to the care of God? How do I turn my life over to God?
Well,
it's like a pancake, like you just flip it.
Well, it's going to be tough if you don't believe in it at the onset, which was the predicament I was in. So first of all, it's actually the whole wording and phrasing of it is we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God.
Yes.
So there's a decision here, and a decision. So we made a decision and we took some action. Okay, and what we're deciding here is, am I going to take steps 4 through 9, which we'll get to, but am I going to take this Steps 4 through 9 involve action. I'm going to be writing some things. I'm going to be, telling my life story to, somebody that's safe to be told all of those things. And I'm going to be looking for my part in it. I'm going to be nailing people to the wall so I can get it all out, but I'm also going to be looking for my part to see why am I continuing to relive these traumas? Who's the one that's pulling the trigger on these, the program running every day, 20 times a day about why, something happened 20 years ago and yet I'm reliving it 20 times a day. And maybe there's a selfishness to that.
Okay.
And that's a big slap in the face to somebody who's going through that, but it's for you to do, not for me, I had to do it for myself. So we're just going to go through steps 4 through 9.
Okay.
We're making a decision to take those actions and we're weighing some things out.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing we're really looking at is this idea of a higher power that we discussed in step 2, that we're now kind of going like, okay, it's invisible, but I'm going to start by turning over my thinking and my emotions and my actions, just piecemeal. You don't have to.
Those are kind of like synonyms for our will in our lives.
Correct. Yeah. So my will is broken. It was broken down for me as this is my thinking and my emotions. What I feel like I want. Well, I feel like I want a cheeseburger. Well, it's like, well, that's not always going to be the healthiest thing for Zach.
But they're so good.
They are extremely delicious.
I'm lactose intolerant, but I still like.
Yeah. I'll punish myself with it. I'll eat till I hate myself. So yeah, we're going in search of why am I eating until I hate myself, or why am I drinking until my life is in the shitter, and then I do it again because my life is in the shitter. So yeah, we're really trying to figure out what is it that is worth moving through steps 4 through 9 are going to be uncomfortable, but why would I want to go through them? And it's the idea that I can see people who have been through these steps. We're a couple of them, by the way. I've seen people go through the steps and they seem to be a very good version of me, possibly. I could see that they were, you can see glimpses of how shitty they were before and that they're better now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of how I see this idea of faith. What about you, Alex?
Let me tell you the correct answer.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I guess for me, it's turn our will in our lives over to the care of God. As I think it's also, there's always this as we understood him part, right? Where it's like, this is design your own adventure, God, in a way. So I think it just kind of keeps it inclusive, even though in this step they use the term God rather than a higher power, but they're, I think to me at least, interchangeable. And I guess to me, it's a lot of like getting out of the outcomes business and getting into the action business, where it's like, I'm going to do what I believe is the right thing to do and what, the universe seems to speak to me. And it's not a trade. It's not transactional. Like, okay, I'm going to meditate every morning and then I want to be able to levitate in 6 months, It's I'm going to do this, and whatever path that guides me on, I'm going to trust is where I'm directed to go. And I'm going to stop wasting a lot of time trying to control, like, well, if I say this thing, then this thing's going to happen. And so I can't say that. So I have to say it this way. Instead, just getting that business of honesty and living spiritual principles, and then trusting that whatever comes out on the other side of it is what's meant to come out. It's a huge relief to me of just trying to control the whole world. Or in the big book, they talk about thinking you're like the director of the universe and that everyone else is like an actor. And it's like, oh, you're not behaving the way I've actually asked you to direct. And it turns out I'm not the director of the universe. I'm just a guy, just a guy. And so it's a real relief that I'm just going to do what I believe is the right thing to do and have some trust that things will work out pretty well. I guess that's to me the biggest faith part, is that the world isn't neutral, that actually it has a positive bias, that if I do things that I'm meant to do and live spiritually, things will turn out well. And it's not just a crapshoot. And to me that is ultimately found for my spirituality, on the fact that the universe, that there's anything at all, the universe is on rather than off. And so just that it continues to go on, right? Why don't we just bloop? And the fact that so for some reason the universe is on makes me think that there's some reason that we're here, that I certainly don't know it, and that it's a positive bias and not just designed for suffering and pain.
So I just feel like we moved just an amazing amount, okay? And actually, this is how I remember, there's a chapter called We Agnostics in the Alcoholics Anonymous literature that I happened to be reading with a fellow who had been through the steps before, was showing them to me, call him a sponsor. And I remember reading this chapter, and it moved basically how Alex just spoke about, like, going from this place of being like, well, I'm trying to direct the show, and I'm trying to arrange all the players to suiting my needs, and then and then I'm going to go and act some roles out myself, and then everybody's like screwing off. They're not saying their lines how I want them to say it. They're not doing their roles the way I want it, and the show did not come off well, is one of the quotes. But then kind of looking at that and admitting, man, I'm kind of a control freak here, and I might be making it worse by doing this.
I'm not a very good director.
Right. Well, and I'm arranging people around my will, assuming that my will is superior to theirs.
Right.
And I may not evaluate that. Like, I may not slow down and look at those things, but kind of we're forced to look at everything if we're trying to change something. Like, let's try to pull out as anything that might seem faulty, and that seems like a pretty faulty idea that we've stumbled across. That maybe that could be a definition of self-centeredness.
And it's kind of like, I guess to me, it's like, I want to make a joke, like, what do you mean I'm not the center of the universe? But it's like, how freaking exhausting to be the center of the universe. Like, I just want to, like, be in it is enough work for me. I maybe I'm getting older, but, like, it's a great deal of work to be the center of it. Oh.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I'll be part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll just revolve around each other, like two,
atoms.
Codependent co-hosts,
Co-hosts. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I think.
Yes, and there we are on that. So we made a decision, because we have a problem we can't solve on our own. We see that there's a solution out there somewhere, and we have this idea of, like, I'm going to have faith that if it's worked for these other people, it's going to work for me. Surely people have changed. I know that it's about the hardest thing to do, and nobody wants to do it. But once you get there, it seems like it's quite worthwhile, especially, and look, you're not going to do it unless you're in an amazing amount of pain, like from the way things are, from just stuck being you.
Especially early on. I think you get in the habit of, like, the change habit. Like, I start to learn the mechanics of how to improve myself, and then I don't have to be on, like, the verge of death to, like, make a change. But I started that way.
Right. Well, the idea of, like, the frontal lobe is that we can think about our thinking and think about potential actions and not take them in order to avoid death.
My favorite lobe.
Ear is my favorite, actually. Oh, okay. Yeah. But frontal is good too. Full frontal, I would prefer.
Frontal lobe. That's how I live my life.
If we're going to get into lobes of the front nature. So yeah, we're seeing that there's a better thing out there somewhere. The conclusion that we come to is, okay, I'm making a decision to take some action. And those actions are, I'm going to turn my thinking and my feelings.
My will and my life.
My will and my life is my actions, okay? So, my will is my thinking and my emotions, and my life is my actions. I'm going to turn those over to a God of my own understanding. Now, I think...
It's kind of like I'm imagining, like, like sometimes they, like, recall weapons, and you, like, turn them over.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, like, here you go.
Yep.
But you'd be God in this case.
Okay, well, that got me into a lot of trouble before, so can we change that paradigm a little bit?
Give them back.
Yeah, okay. Like the idea of surrender, like surrender your weapons. Like, whatever your weapons are, the thing that you've been, when an occupying when two things go to war, one thing wins, there's a surrender, it's turn over your weapons. And what are the weapons in this scenario? It is your thinking and your emotions are driving you to take these insane actions. So you come ready built with a program that is you're gonna have some sub programs running in there. We talked about emotional sobriety. Everybody gets drunk on emotions, not just alcoholics and addicts. Everybody gets drunk on emotions. So the idea is like, where am I getting drunk on emotions in my life? Where am I, like, getting into rage? Where am I getting into fear? Where am I getting into self-pity? Where am I getting into selfishness and isolating myself, and then I'm staying sick because when I'm acting out and getting the short-term benefit of, like, oh, well, when I'm super mad and I yell, people are afraid of me and I feel that power, and then I get into a habit of that possibly. And so, probably everybody has some of those moments where we get emotionally inebriated, and so that's the issue that we're trying to really zone in on is my emotions trigger an outcome that I'm stuck on for some reason, and my thinking. I've heard it said you can't think your way into right action. You act your way into right thinking. When you start acting and doing the right actions, it tends to, your emotions, whatever you're going through, if you can get yourself to do the action, the emotion will start to change.
Yeah.
The thinking will start to follow the emotional change. So the action is followed by the emotions that are, associated with that action, and then the thinking will follow. So, I drank because my sick drinking was associated with my sick thinking. So I can't think my way into a new emotion usually. It's usually like my emotional state changes and then my thinking follows along with that. So, and they all change from action. So it's the idea of, okay, I'm going to get into some action, and whatever that is, it doesn't matter how I feel about it. It doesn't matter what I think about it. I'm putting that shit aside. I'm assuming I feel terrible about new action. I'm assuming I'm thinking terrible things about that. I don't want to do it, but I do it anyway. And so the action of the third step is actually a prayer. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. Why would a prayer, today I love the idea of a prayer being an action, because you don't have to go spend 5 hours doing your taxes to take this action. You just pray to a God that you don't believe in, which was, for me, it was actually, okay, that was difficult, but it's just memorizing a set of words and then saying them again and again over the course, many days in a row. And apparently, even if you don't believe in anything, something, you'll have an experience around that in and of itself. So it's a prayer. We're getting into a prayer. Why would a prayer be an agent of change unless we are trying to change our thinking and our emotions? Can we use some formula of words to change, to either stop thinking or stop feeling how we're feeling, and then maybe identify it and then change those things? And that's what the third step is really preparing us for, is changing our thinking, changing our emotions, changing our actions.
Let's change the slide.
All right, so God is or isn't. He is everything or else he is nothing. Yeah. Hard change of topic. Alex, why don't you take that one?
So I guess it's something that's often brought up in or a phrase I've heard a bunch, is either God is everything or nothing. And the idea is there's not at least monotheistic kind of all-consuming, all-powerful kind of forces. They aren't. It's not like a Roman god that's in charge of just strictly rope. The way that I conceive of a higher power is this is everything beyond my comprehension. And so that's a pretty all or nothing proposition. Either I believe in that and it's everything, and then I need to really reevaluate the way I'm living my life. Because if I'm in a universe where there's this loving giant force that consumes and touches everybody and loves everything, then I need to be nicer to my friends, Right. Or the alternative is God is nothing, in which case I should get back into drugs, probably.
Right.
But then the drugs are so awesome that anyway, so.
Well, you have such a bad time on the drugs again, you're like, oh, I got to go back to change,
right.
You can always go back and regress into what you were doing before.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free. This is it's all optional. This is all just optional.
Sure.
Would you like to change?
Yeah.
This is a path of change if you want to take it.
And I guess just the last part to me is, again, I think I was saying before, it's really weird the universe exists. It's a really weird thing, right? Why? Because it seems a lot easier for there to be nothing. Because I like to wash my car, and that's a great deal of work. I don't do it enough. And so to make a whole universe or to have a whole universe show up, it seems like a bias towards there's something greater than myself going on. And that humility of just that one kind of thought gives me a lot of ability to believe in something greater than myself, because it's just so weird.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so in counseling, I've taken some counseling classes, okay? So take it for what it's worth.
I've been to a lot of therapists.
Yeah, there you go. Me too. I lied to all of them when I was a younger person. That's what we do. Sorry, healthcare professionals out there, for having to deal with people like us at our worst. And thank you also. So in the counseling approach to things, we're talking about worldview. Worldview is this set of, what is this reality? How does one live the good life within this construct?
Kind
And
of like,
so-
what are the rules of the game? Almost.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if this was a video game, what are the rules? How do you win?
Yeah.
And based on how you, and so our minds actually, it seems like throughout human history, we've come up with origin stories. If you research any culture out there, they all had an origin story, and that helped them have a culture. There was a civilization built upon these presuppositions of like, there's a fire
Rope god.
there's a rope god that you climb up to the sun in the sky, and yeah, so it's this idea of, so what created this? How did we get here? What am I? Who am I? So we get to this question in the AA or 12-step version of this is this phrase, or are these two questions: God is or isn't, and is he everything or is he nothing? And we're saying he, it doesn't have to be a he. It's just back in the day in the 30s, it was always he, right? But he, she, it, them, whatever you want to talk about it. So this idea, to me, there's two questions in there. And it's God is not. And then this idea of, God is everything or else he's nothing. And maybe that's like, God is everything and everything's connected and God's right here, right now. Or nothing is connected, like this is all a cipher, it's all a vacuum. We're just randomly occurring particles sitting in front of cameras talking to other masses of electrons and stuff. And there's no intelligence behind it. There's no plan, no nothing. So to me, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 little worldviews right there. And immediately you kind of understand that this is a frame up. At least for me, I was always very skeptical. I understand this is a frame up. We're supposed to answer, yes, God is, and yes, God is everything. Okay, I get that. Because I'm basically being told what to do and manipulated by these two questions, fuck that answer is how I always wanted to respond. So we're going to look at the other three and we're going to slide in there. We're going to slide into those DMs, okay? And, first I think is probably this idea of there is no God, but everything is connected. This is a great outcome. If moral atheists is kind of what would classify under this. A lot of good in the world is done by people who understand that there's going to be things that come after them. There's things that came before them that went pretty well for them to be here. So they're going to act their way forward. Any good action that they do, any good kind word that they utter to another person through the butterfly effect will change the future for the better forever. And anything negative that they do will do the opposite of that, right? But that there's a consequence to their actions. They're living in a world of karma, basically. And there doesn't need to be a God. And again, some of my favorite people in the world are moral atheists. Then you have this idea of the God is, but he isn't here. That he's not everything because he's not here. So that's probably where I ended up at my sickest. And I probably moved between these three a little bit. At my sickest, I was probably there because it was like, well, if God's not here and we're supposed to earn our way to him, this is what I thought religion was teaching, that God's not here. This is a proving ground. You're here to earn your way to God. God's in heaven somewhere, quote unquote, Shangri-La or whatever, and we're here to earn it. And I'd already felt my emotions were telling me that I was not going to earn my way there because I already felt shame and guilt to my core. It's what my whole personality was built on. So I'm not going to get to that heaven. So fuck God because I'm in pain and he created this thing and then he's not here. So fuck him. And that's a childish way of looking at it, as you can tell. But maybe some of you have that idea as well. And I can talk you through how silly that is because I have had that. The really dangerous one here is there is no God and nothing is connected. This is where, if you read the diaries of school shooters, you'll see that these guys are, this is where you really become, you're the God here, and if this place is only pain, then what's your experience? Well, this place is pain because we've established life generally tends to be suffering. Life is suffering and I should, whatever this construct is, it seems to be against me, so I'm going to take out as many innocents as possible because fuck this whole reality. And that's a really scary place to be. That's a very nihilistic place to be. And probably I dwelled, to be honest, like when the school shooting, I grew up in Littleton near Columbine. When the school shootings happened, and it was like the trench coat mafia that did it. I remember being, I was not popular in my high school. I was very alone and isolated. And I was like, oh yeah, I could see how they hated jocks and stuff like that. Like I could identify because I felt so much pain, And so now all of a sudden I'm identifying with some of the sickest people out there. So anyway, like I was really trying to test those three out. I didn't want to go to this place where God is and he's right here, right now. He, she, it is right here, right now. Alex, where did you feel you fell into those? If those are four little quadrants, where did you feel like you fell into those in your ism, in your addiction?
Yeah, I think sort of in this, I wasn't that into God. I like thought I was not into like religion, right? And so it was just like, oh, like that's just a waste of time. None of that stuff is real. I was into myself and kind of thought like, well, yeah, I kind of thought you could do whatever you wanted, but I never really had much like ill intent. I didn't want to like hurt other people, but I just thought I wasn't that good at like doing what I wanted.
Right.
Like I just like somehow screwed it up, or like people didn't like me or something like that. Like I was more of like very kind of like a poorly functioning moral atheist kind of. Mm-hmm. Like I think it would be like cool to have a cool life, but I didn't really know how to do it, and didn't think people liked me or something like that, or like I always feel like everyone else knew something I like was missing out on.
Totally.
You know?
Me too.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, are you guys trying to get wasted or what? And so I think for me that like, I don't know how that fits into quadrants really, but that's kind of the way I operate. It was just like, it's kind of, we're all out for ourselves, but like we need to kind of pretend we're not, because then I get more for myself. And kind of live from that place. I was always mad, like I wasn't even getting the shit I wanted, and I seemed to be the only one. Like everyone seemed to be playing by these God rules and like winning, but I'm like, guys, like those are wrong.
There's nothing there.
Yeah,
like, that's stupid. Yeah.
And it was not a great experience.
Okay, so in this experiment that you've been running of the 12 steps,
yes.
have you tried that idea of God is and God is everything?
Yes.
Like God is right here, right now. How do you practice that?
So I think part of that is like seeing what's outside of me as equal to like what's in me. So it's not this like egocentric worldview, but literally like the idea that like Zach's experience may be equal and like as rich and unique as mine. Or really the way I think about it is that like there is a single consciousness and we are all resting within it. And like it's kind of like these different lights are on or different cameras all observing the same experience. And so like what's the conscious inside of you, inside of me, maybe inside of the cameraman, is all the same thing. And it's all just kind of like from a different angle on the film sort of. And that I'm just happy to be like sort of part of that film. And sometimes like when I meditate, like I'll hear like sound outside of me I start to lose that distinction, and it's just like I'm just something observing, and so that's the experience I have, and just a gratefulness that like I get to be on light in this universe, basically.
So it sounds like a feeling of unity, like of oneness with all things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that it's almost like all things are coming to you, and you're moving to all things as well, and into this big pudding, you could say.
Yes, a big brown pudding.
A big brown, shitty, but beautiful, effervescent pudding.
Effervescent pudding.
So what kind of spiritual practices have you used what kind of actions have you taken to pretend or play it out as though, to change your emotions, to change your thinking?
Yeah, so I'm really big into like habits. I think like motivation, inspiration are very like short-term things. Like, what I'm motivated to do is like lie in bed and like smoke weed, So I can't go by that. I need to go by creating like healthy habits that are like, would look like the life and person I want to be. And so for me, that's like a great deal of very practical stuff. And it's funny for me, it's so practical. And that is how I can reach something greater in myself. So that starts every day with like, I have a shrine in my room at the foot of my bed that has like photos of loved ones and like little trinkets and things that hold meaning for me. And I literally wake up and get out of bed and pray on my knees every morning. A couple prayers that are from AA, but are sort of just spiritual prayers, the Serenity Prayer, the 3rd Step Prayer, the 7th Step Prayer. And I just try to stop and take a second, be like, okay, like I'm still going here, like, and just take a minute and like be grateful for that before I rush into answering emails. And then also, so on one sense, it's a spiritual practice, and another, like, it gets me out of bed and like calm in a very practical way. And then from there, I have like all these other habits. I like make a cup of coffee. I sit without my phone and just drink the coffee. I meditate. I do this like Wim Hof breathing stuff. So it's like these big breaths and I basically hyperventilate, but it feels great and really chills you out. And then I exercise pretty much every day. I call my sponsor every day and just kind of get this rolling. I journal every morning after I do all that stuff. I actually write every morning in the journal like my mental health score from 1 to 10. And then I text it to my good friend and she texts me hers every morning.
Nice.
And independent of the score, it's just like to take a minute and be like, okay, like this is a variable thing, my mental health. And like, I'm just going to stop and be like, I'm at a 7.5 today. It's not really important the number so much as the awareness that like, it's a thing that changes and like is subject to my decisions basically.
Blowing my mind.
Yeah, and then I actually write in my journal things I feel like I did well or are going well for me. So I might be like, oh, I feel healthy. I feel like I'm doing good work and I'm treating my girlfriend well. And then I'll have like things intent. So rather than like things I'm not doing well, I've changed it to like, okay, like what are things I want to focus on? Oh, I want to eat healthy today. I want to make sure I like clean up my house, just practical things. That's like what I want to focus on. I write down what I'm grateful for every day. So it could sometimes be, the program, my routine, my parents, whatever. And then I write how I feel, just emotionally. Like, I feel calm today, or I feel excited or anxious or whatever it is. And just kind of be like, okay, like here's the lay of the land today. And then I go from there.
That's incredible. So journaling, writing, actually making words with your body.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
body words.
Yeah. Body words. Yeah. I've had similar experiences actually.
Well, I just want to say one other thing. And like part of what and so by doing all this stuff, it's like I can have self-esteem, right? Because I'm acting in a way that I can actually like esteem. And so it's been this reverse, like, now at first it was like, I'm going to meditate, but it's like, I'm going to trick myself into being this way. And now it's like really a part of who I am. Like I look forward to meditating every day and it's not a struggle or like this thing I'm trying on. It's like really how I live. And then I think also just the consistency of it, of like I've developed these habits that are, nobody else watches it, nobody else needs like, we're talking about it here, but like I don't wake up and call people like, I like meditated today. It's just a personal practice and I travel a lot for work and it's a thing I can take with me wherever I go. And just developing that consistent every single day I show up and do those things is like a way for me to build up kind of a story or like a relationship to myself in a healthy way, rather than like waking up every day and like pounding a shot and like trying to figure out how to like skip class, Those are my habits before. So it's a much better set.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So I heard this definition of, meditation literally means to become familiar with. And I like that concept of when I hear that, plus I know I'm sitting fucking quietly with my eyes closed and I'm focusing on my breathing. Well, what am I becoming familiar with? Well, I'm probably becoming familiar with my emotions. I'm going to feel fear and it's going to be unabated by outside distractions. So it's just going to be happening, And so, a little meditation I've tried and been successful with is, meditating with my fear, like focusing on, I'm looking for the fear. Where is it? And then just sitting with it and being like, what are you? Let me get to know you a little bit. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? And yeah, exactly. And, because it's a part of me and it may be a false part, but nonetheless, it'd be good to get to know it. So I'm sitting with my emotions and I'm sitting with my thoughts. I'm hearing a lot of the same stuff. They say 90% of your thoughts, I think it's something like 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day.
Are bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, probably but do you think that many thoughts a day?
Wow.
And I mean, I'm thinking thoughts on thoughts on thoughts, like there's certain thoughts that I have to get really quiet and sit in a quiet room and really focus on deeper levels to actually hear.
Yeah.
There's very quiet thoughts that are seeming to drive some louder thoughts in my frontal lobe, maybe. So I'm trying to get familiar with what are my thinking patterns. 90% of them are the same from the day before. And 60 to 70,000 thoughts. I'm thinking tens of thousands of thoughts that were the same as almost every day that I've ever lived or close to that. And then, but what are the jewels within that? And sometimes they seem to present themselves after just sitting with it for a while. I notice I'm on a train of thought. Oh yeah, I'm on a train of thought and I'm rehearsing something or I'm replaying something or I'm fantasizing about, I wish I was, or I'm afraid of something or I'm, regretting something maybe, but I'm in some other place than the present moment. So I'm going back to this idea of, I'm just becoming, I think all these thoughts, and one thought might be telling me that I'm traumatized and I'm a victim, and another thought I might be, and this might be the pinnacle of why I suffer. And then I'll think about all the guys I played hockey with who didn't think I was their best friend. And guys that I was on one team for a half a year or something. And that one little instant of like some guy that I never had a close connection with will bother me on the same level as, the worst things that ever happened to me. And it's like, so all of a sudden there's this balance that's like, this is just thinking. It's just throwing shit against the wall, trying to get something to stick. And becoming familiar with that. So there's a meditation element. But I actually wasn't able to meditate until I was about a year and a half sober. The thing that I tried first was prayer. So the third step is a prayer as much as anything else. If you meet 12 steppers, it's a prayer. So what is the prayer, Alex? Can you take us through the whole thing first as we put it on the screen?
God, I offer myself to thee to do with me and to build with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Wow. So that's a mouthful. Why am I memorized? In the 12-step rooms, my sponsor was like, okay, so you're going to want to memorize this. You have a little ceremony. You pick this is not universal, but we're introducing the idea of like this sacred practice of prayer into your life. This idea of you're going to say something, an incantation of sorts that's going to wash your brain. You need your brain to be washed. People say, oh, they're brainwashing people there. It's like, have you seen how fucking filthy these brains are? Mine was disgusting. So I needed to introduce this idea of I'm going to talk to something that maybe created me. I'm going to talk to something that I could call God. I have some ideas. We talked about our call to action last week was, I'm looking at what are some ideas that I would want to have be God. And now I'm talking to that thing to say, fucking make me useful. So God, I offer myself to thee, and we're using thee and thou, so it's like, for some reason, my brain understands we're talking to something big. Call it what you will. I didn't believe in God when I started doing this, by the way. I just was saying, like, if he was there, he wasn't, if there was a God, he wasn't here. It's probably my conception. But I'm trying to talk to it, and I'm putting in some effort. So you know what? Just build with me and do with me is that whatever you want, let me do that. And I actually got a lot of power from that. And the thing that we did was we did it on our knees. So I did this little ceremony. I held hands with this man on my knees. I happened to be in a cemetery. And I actually had like a gay joke going through my head at the time. Like, I'm on my knees before God and I'm holding hands with another dude. And, I'm not very comfortable with myself. So I'm trying to offshoot with humor. My brain's just producing this gay joke of like, what are we doing with God here, guys? But we said this prayer and I felt something move and I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was God. I don't mean move sexually, but like a realigning. There was something that seemed to like when you put a puzzle piece in and it just feels so good.
Yeah.
It was like something like that.
Okay.
So I don't know if there was a God listening to it, but there was something that felt good about doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I proceeded, since then to pray every single morning as soon as I wake up. And for a very long time, it was I'd roll right out of bed onto my knees and I'd pray as though like I'm starting my day on my knees. Thank you for this day. Put me into action for you. Whatever your will is, let's get after it. My plan probably sucked. What's your plan? And maybe I'll get to start planning some things in the near future.
I think there's also, there's the specifics of this prayer, and then there's also just this idea of prayer, which is basically dialogue or conversation with some greater power, this thing that you imagine would be the best way the universe could work. And the more I talk to that thing, the more I'm able to get a sense of what it's like, how it can behave, and how I can be more like it. And so I think it's, independent of the specific prayer, it's just building that relationship, right? Where it's like, I don't need you to like tell me I'm cool. I have this thing that's way more powerful than you that I'm in direct contact with. And I think building that habit over time, like unconsciously and consciously, like allows me to live at a more elevated consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And so there's more to that prayer, obviously, but relieve me of the bondage of self. Like I'm stuck on myself. I definitely felt like I was a slave to this personality. Relieve me of that so I can better do your will. So it's really saying like, take whatever personality that, is not useful to you, and take it and throw it away and give me whatever you need.
Get me out of
to
my own way, kind of.
Exactly. And they say selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. So when I'm in ego, it means I'm being selfish. We all have issues with selfishness. I don't care if you're drunk or not. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. So what does that part mean to you, Alex?
It's basically like, let me be almost like a example of the way things can be good to inspire others. And this idea that like, almost like you were saying, what we've been saying this whole kind of podcast, it's like, if it can work for us, like it can work for anybody. And so sort of like, rather than like glorify me so I can be rich and famous, it's like, let me overcome myself as an example for others that overcoming oneself is possible.
Totally. Yeah, like it's okay to pray for yourself, but it's not like, God, help me get that girlfriend or help me get that big job. It's more like, just whatever difficulties are here or coming my way, please help me have some victory over those things. Stay with me through some of those trials, so that others may see that
kind of like, let me be
going
the
to
light
God can
almost.
help you.
Like,
what's that?
Almost like, let me be the light or an example of God.
Totally. Yeah. Be the light. Yeah, exactly. And other people are going to see that, right? Because you're the light, right? So they're seeing that something good is happening in your life. I've had so many people go like, what the fuck is going on with you? I ran my life into the ground, and may I do thy will always. So this is kind of the short, the third step is relatable to the 10th step. Later on, where we're headed is we're trying to have a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. And so later on, we're doing some action steps. This is the first real action where I'm like praying every day. I'm gonna make a commitment to pray every day to a God I don't believe in, and see what happens. And it's a prayer like this, make me useful for you today. And you can come up with one on your own. It says that, in the literature, it's like, make it your own. This is something that we came up with that works. And then I'm going to do these actions, and then I'm going to, 4 through 9 are action steps. And then in the 10th step, 10, 11, and 12, those are the truncated daily actions that I can take each day. And so, 10, 11, and 12 is where I don't have to do all of these every day. I shorten it to 10, 11, and 12. So what Alex was talking about with, writing a lot. Where was I good today? Where was I off today? How am I feeling today? Do I have any apologies to make? That's an example of 10-step work, which we're going to get into, which is a shortened version of the steps 4 through 9. So
speaking of actions, is there any call to action for this week's episode?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to challenge you guys. So this is under the idea of, if we want to change, we're trying to look at what are the systems in which we would be changing, okay? If we're willing to look at this idea of a higher power or a God, you know what that word means, but you can come up with a better version of that, probably. I'm still trying to come up with a better version for me. I'm trying to have this experience of whatever that God thing is, I want to pretend that it's right here, right now with me, okay? And so my challenge for you is pretend that God is everything. So pretend that God is something in the room and it's trying to give you a message, okay? So this is particularly useful. This was something that it turns anything that's mundane into something that's highly interesting. Because if you seem to pay attention, my experience was if I sat in a room and listened to people as though they were God talking to me, and there was also them, but it was like there was a part of truth that was trying to speak directly to me about whatever was going on in my life and how I could be helped. The strange thing started to happen that it really did appear as though there was a real thing that was really trying to get to me. And so I'm not saying that's going to be your experience. I'm saying that of those 4 quadrants that we talked about, what if that one quadrant was the one that got the best outcomes for you in your life? And if God is, and if God is everything, what outcome would that bring to you? So I want you to pretend today, even if you already have a God in your life, even if you don't, even if you would never, just pretend that there is a God. He's right here. He's right now. He, she, it is right here with you. What is it saying to you? And try to practice that as much throughout the day as possible until we see you again. That's my call to action this week.
All right, Zach. Well, it's good to talk to you.
It's amazing to talk with you always. Thank you so much for doing this thing together with us. And we want to plug our production company, Blackwater Audio and Tyler Duffus, you're the man. Thank you so much. Avery Quest does the music, the intro, outro. That music is called Animal Cannibal, if you want to find it on anywhere you find music. And that was step 3. That was faith. Next week, we're doing step 4. What is the step 4 principle, Alex?
I don't know. That's next week. You tell me.
It's all about courage, bro. It's the heart. We're getting into the heart. We're getting into some really good stuff. The 3rd step is amazing. The 4th step is fucking incredible. So we hope you join us. And thanks so much for being with us now.